Welcome back to CryptosRus. I'm George, or all George. So let's talk about what this banking giant has just said about Bitcoin for not only 2023, but 2024 bold predictions. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the new week starting and what to expect. Let's do this. Welcome, guys. Hopefully you guys had a good weekend. And Bitcoin is still holding strong at 30,200. I almost forgot the bell. And today the U.S. market is looking mixed once again. Not sure. Wall Street, not sure where things are going. People are still worried about inflation and macro factors and Fed Chair Powell. I mean, there's a lot going on. So U.S. market's kind of iffy these days. As for economic data, you have a big reading coming up on Wednesday and Thursday, but CPI is the one that really most people look at. That will come on Wednesday, PPI on Thursday, jobless claims Thursday, and consumer sentiment Friday. Pretty important. All these are pretty important. So, of course, this all relates to the next rate hike that's coming up end of this month in a couple of weeks, right? So this is why Wall Street is so iffy, trying to digest and predict, how the U.S. economy really is. And is it really that outstanding or not, right? How hawkish is Powell going to be? Don't know. Now, in addition, we have a lot of earnings from some of the biggest financial companies, including JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Citigroup. You got BlackRock also reporting. And then you have some brands like Pepsi and United Health and the Delta Air and Conagra brands. So you got a good mix of earnings and no tech. Tech has been absolutely outstanding. But now we're hearing from the banks and some of these other big boys. So, this week, there's going to be a lot of data to digest, economic data and earning data that Wall Street will digest and determine whether or not they should start buying. Remember, there's $8 trillion. Recently, there's an article about $8 trillion waiting on the sidelines. Okay, $8 trillion. So keep that in mind. Coinbase, of course, biggest exchange in the U.S., their shares up 50% since the lawsuits. Think about how that makes sense. It doesn't, right? But this is, to me, like a big middle finger to Gary Gensler, to SEC. Who would have thought that after being sued by the SEC, the shares will go up. It doesn't quite make sense, right? But Coinbase has the backing of BlackRock, has the backing of all these major fund companies that are trying to come out the Bitcoin spot ETF. Coinbase is going to be either the custodian or the surveillance partner. So there's definitely a lot of institutions backing Coinbase, which is why it doesn't seem like Wall Street really cares about this lawsuit, and they think that Coinbase will be just fine. Right now, as for other macro news, what's interesting is China. China has been going, at least their factory orders, has been going through deflation. And those of you guys that know the difference between deflation and inflation knows that deflation is much worse than inflation. That means that there are just no orders in this case. Okay, demand is so low that things are getting cheaper because there are zero orders or very, very low orders, right? And that's still the case because their PPI, unlike ours, is in the negative. Okay, so that's showing true deflation. However, supposedly things are improving. And if things improve and China starts getting their orders up again, that shows that the global appetite is increasing. But right now, it's looking pretty dire over there. But we know that China is trying to go very pro crypto at this point. That's why they opened up basic crypto trading and all these other services in Hong Kong because they want to do that big push. But kind of interesting to see that. Okay, now as for this banking giant prediction, there's a lot of predictions out there, but recently, Standard Chartered has become very, very pro Bitcoin. This is coming like out of their CEO's mouth. This is not just some analyst that's saying this. Standard Chartered's CEO is very bullish on Bitcoin, and more so now because of all the excitement over Bitcoin spot ETFs. So previously, Standard Chartered came out with a prediction that by the end of 2024, Bitcoin would be at $100,000, which makes a lot of sense by the end of 2024 because that's after the halving event, and that's when we go into that parabolic phase leading into 2025, right? But now they have upped it from 100 to 120,000 by the end of 2024, another 20%. And they went on and predicted that Bitcoin will be at 50,000 by the end of this year, which isn't too far off now. We're like mid-July, closing in on August, okay? I mean, these are really solid predictions. These are not the unbelievable predictions that we have heard of before, like Coinbase co-founder saying Bitcoin will hit $1 million in 90 days. Like, that's just too unbelievable. But for Bitcoin to hit 50,000 by the end of the year, considering we're closing in at 31 once again, right? We're 31, to go up about, 50% from here on to the end of the year? That's believable. And then to double from about 50 to 100, 120 by 2024, certainly believable because we have the halving event next year, right? So these are good predictions, good numbers. And this is coming from a bank that holds $800 million in assets. So not the biggest bank out there, but they're certainly no fish fry. So that's awesome. There's just a lot of enthusiasm. FOMO is really building, okay? Not with retail investors. Here's the thing. FOMO's not really building with retail investors. You could see it. If it was, then alts would be blowing up right now. But right now, alts are not. So it's not retail FOMO right now. It's institutional FOMO. Institutional FOMO always comes first because they're the big money. They're the smart money. They have been doing this a long time, right? And they can see trends, predict trends. They're not always accurate, but this is the one sector none of them want to miss out on. And I think a lot of them feel like they have because they missed out on the last run in 2021. And a lot of them have been sitting on sidelines since 2017, watching. They're like, this is enough. We need to get in before 2025 happens because this next time there will be so much money in this space. They'll look fools. They'll look like fools because they missed out once again, right? So that's why there's so much institutional FOMO at this point. Now, there are still some retail investors, right, that are continuing to DCA and HODL, and that's fantastic. Maybe we don't have retail FOMO yet, but the holders still continue to buy and store, basically, right? 6 months, within the last 6 months, we have seen 500,000 Bitcoin leave the exchanges, okay? 500,000, not $500,000, 500,000. Because there's just more and more accumulation. That's it. It's really that simple. And 92.5% of all Bitcoin that will ever be in existence have been mined. Oh, that's pretty loud. Sorry about that. There's only about 7.5% left, okay? And that is spread across 100 years. Most of it will be within the next 2 cycles. But after that, then the amount that gets released becomes very, very little. Very little. And even now, you could argue close to 93% that there will ever be is already out there. And a lot of it is lost. A lot of it is held by the early guys. A lot of it is held by the miners. And now a lot of it, a whole lot of it, is being held by institutions. So if you take all of those things into account, there's really not that much for regular folks like you and I. So that's why it's time to keep, well, it's time to get in if you're not in, and time to keep accumulating if you are in. The hash rate of Bitcoin also, speaking of miners, it just keeps going up. We're at an all-time high once again. It just seems like we keep forming all-time highs. Bitcoin is the only crypto where the price trails the hash rate. It's the only one. And think about it. Bitcoin's hash rate is at an all-time high. Bitcoin's price is not. So there's a big difference there. And eventually we'll catch up. Not quite there yet, but will. And speaking of technicals, here's a pretty good one. The 20 and 200 moving average on the weekly scale. And Bitcoin has just formed a golden cross, something that has never, ever, ever in history has ever done before. That's very bullish. This is something that Bitcoin has never, ever done before. Formed this golden cross between the moving average of 20 and 200 on the weekly scale, right? That's pretty bullish. All right, so that's what happened today. And with Bitcoin, what about some other stuff? What about Vitalik? Vitalik of Ethereum, well, rather than talk about Ethereum, he's also talking about Bitcoin. He said good things about Bitcoin because he feels like the builder culture or mentality is back because of Ordinal's inscription. And he would love to see Bitcoin experiment with more layer 2 solutions, not just with payments, but with everything else. Maybe with smart contracts, or maybe with, just some other layer 2 that utilizes rollup so it doesn't congest Bitcoin's network, and things can still be done cheaply, right? And basically all the things that we've been seeing on Ethereum for quite some time, which is why Arbitrum and Optimism and ZK Sync and ZK EVM, they all exist because these layer 2 solutions are all trying to help Ethereum scale. And Vitalik says, well, love to see that happen with Bitcoin. Now, some people hate it. Some Bitcoin maxis hate it. But others love it because the Bitcoin maxis that think everything else is a shit coin, right? Now they can just concentrate and build on Bitcoin. And speaking of Bitcoin, their ecosystem is what it looks like. There is a vast ecosystem, but there's definitely a lot more that's coming. What else? 15 CBDCs likely by 2030. Not sure that this is good, but CBDCs are definitely coming. There's a lot of countries talking about releasing a digital fiat equivalent, okay? A digital dollar, a digital yen, a digital euro, digital sterling, digital whatever, ruble, right? It's all coming. Now, keep in mind, when you have a digital fiat controlled by the governments, okay, and central banks, they're not the same as Bitcoin. People have asked me that in the past, right? Is this going to hurt Bitcoin? No, because Bitcoin is still non-sovereign, uncontrolled by any government or entity, right? You can't apply policy to it. You can't just create more out of thin air like what the central banks have done over the last few years, creating trillions upon trillions upon trillions and just releasing that and dumping that onto their citizens. So still big differences. Binance.us, a lot of you guys have wondered, a lot of you guys in the US wondering why the trading pairs with USD is so off. It's because right now there's a lot of fear about Binance.us, their banking woes, Right now, it seems like they're okay. They still allow fiat withdrawals, but they have said they want to go pure crypto. They want to get rid of the fiat side because of all the FUD from the SEC, right? This is the reason why USD, anything with a USD pair is really off. It doesn't matter if it's like Bitcoin / USD or Ethereum / USD or even USDT / USD. There's a big difference between the prices of like 8%. So just keep that in mind. So if you're using Binance US, you should just stick with the crypto pairs like USDT, USDC, and then also I think that's it. They don't really have any BUSD pairs anymore. So just keep that in mind. That's why there is a discrepancy. Also, Pancake Swap coming from basically the biggest DEX from BNB chain. They have announced a big partnership with Google, and that's fantastic. Google is making a lot of partnerships with a lot of crypto companies, mostly because they're just trying to be the cloud provider. So if you think about it, really, there's a lot of decentralized cloud providers out there, okay? But they're small, unknown, right? Unproven at this point. But they have their advantages. For example, Flux, they're much, much cheaper if you're hosting on them versus Google. But they don't have the name recognition, right? And that's why a lot of these crypto companies do partner with Google for that name recognition. But ultimately, in the future, these kind of partnerships should be done with other crypto-based or Web3 projects that can do the same thing and be a lot cheaper too, a lot more robust as well. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts about that. All right, let's see. U.S. market is mixed today. NASDAQ red, maybe flipping in green. Dow has flipped into green, so that's pretty good. Bitcoin coming up slightly, and overall market cap is about the same. It's about the same. All right, let's do some Q&A. All right, I saw John Thomas, new member of the channel. Thank you for joining. All right, let's see what else I missed here. Do you think it's possible, Crypto Boy asked, do you think it's possible 28K support will be visited? I mean, it's always possible, but man, Bitcoin has been really strong. Bears try to push it below 30,000, and it comes right back up. Like, it's a very solid support right now. So can I hit 20K? Sure, but right now it seems like we will be just holding at 30. Scrolling here. I agree with Vitalik on layer 2. Base layer should not be changed. Yep. Clogging up the chain right now, right? That's everyone's concern. I think a lot of maxis, they're concerned that there's just too much spam and crap on Bitcoin's chain, right? And moving them off to a layer 2 solution actually does make a lot of sense, right? Sunshine Isaacs asks, what do you think will happen when the exchanges run out of Bitcoin supply? Well, they're going to be hurting by then. A lot of them will be moving to DEXs. Even Binance said that. CZ said that eventually DEXs will overtake centralized exchanges. But they'll figure out a way to adapt. They'll have to, or they just go bankrupt. Are there any downsides to layer 2s like security? Well, there's always concerns about that. You know, the true layer 2s, you know, they can hook up to, and this is beyond me from a technical standpoint, but their consensus is hooked up to the base layer, and it's done in a way where there's, you know, it's a lot more secure than, say, using bridges, which we hear a lot about hacks. But the way, if you look at like Lightning Network, how it's hooked up to Bitcoin, it's very solid. But of course, there are concerns. You know, layer 2s, they might not have enough liquidity, and there's other things that I can't even think about right now. So of course, it's not as good as the base layer, but yeah, so there's pros and cons. Let's just put it that way. What would be, Jolamas asked, what would be a bigger catalyst? A Bitcoin ETF or a medium-large economy, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, adopted Bitcoin as legal tender? To be honest, Bitcoin spot ETF. Because the numbers, I don't know. Like, Brazil's pretty big, okay? But like if it's like Argentina and Colombia, like their GDP probably isn't as large as some of the volume trades that you know Wall Street conducts from some of these big institutions, right? So if you're looking at it from that perspective, the numbers that gets like pushed around from Wall Street alone is bigger than a lot of these economies. And that's why I think, yeah, Bitcoin spot ETF in the US would have a bigger benefit, immediate benefit. Long term, probably not. Long term, it'd be much better to have a country like Brazil fully adopt Bitcoin. But short term, yeah, definitely spot Bitcoin ETF. Can I borrow $6,000 for a new Hellcat transmission? That sucks. That sucks. You must have been too hard on it. Is it true China has stopped exporting certain resources to U.S. for semiconductor sanctioned? I don't know if that's true. I know the U.S. has been prohibiting guys like Nvidia from shipping like their chips to China. I don't know if that's repercussions of that. Do you think another country will make Bitcoin legal tender next bull run? Yes. I think a lot of the Latin American countries are looking at it. I think African countries, there has been another country in Africa, is a Central Republic or something, a smaller country, but I think a lot of the poorer countries, developing countries, especially countries where their citizens have more mobile phones than bank accounts, I think and ones that are suffering hyperinflation, so even guys like Turkey, I think they're all looking at it. You know, it's not easy to just make Bitcoin legal tender. And it's not easy to just replace your own fiat with Bitcoin, but I think a lot of them are looking at it, and we will hear more about it in the future. Robert asked, does this feel like previous cycles? I know the charts say so, but do you think as OG this is the same? Actually, the drawdown is even longer than before. So it actually felt longer. It did. But did it feel as scary as before? No, it didn't. I don't know. I mean, yes, I've been through a few cycles, but you know, I've learned from my previous mistakes, learned from those cycles. So this time around, I had a lot more cash on the side. Previous cycles, I had like no cash. That was the worst thing, right? This time around, I told you guys I held about 20 to 25% cash. That was critical because I was able to use that at DCA along the way, right? But also, what helped was, our bottom was much higher than before. And we came off a bottom pretty quickly. We stood, this drawdown was a long time, but, we didn't stay at that bottom that long. And it was much higher than before. So that made things easier to relate to, I guess. So if you look at like when Bitcoin was at 3,000, right? That was a horrible time. And everyone is predicting at that time it'll go down to 1,000, right? So if you put that into perspective, this time when we fell down to 15,000, yeah, it sucks compared to 69,000, but again, 15,000 is 5 times more than the previous low. So if you put that into perspective, you're like, yeah, okay, it's bad, but not nearly as bad as it looks. So that helped a lot too. Am I bullish on BNB? Yes. BNB has always been slow. It doesn't pump a lot. If it moves like a very slow but long trending move. So that's why not a whole lot of people get excited about BNB, but BNB chain is a robust chain, a ton of transactions. It's actually more transactions than Ethereum per day. And of course, Binance, the Binance factor. Gregio, I think that's how you say it. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Price prediction for the next bull run. I mean, it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be, I think it's going to be more than people expect because of the institutions. Institution FOMO will be unlike anything we have ever seen in any cycle because it didn't exist before. It really didn't. I remember 2017 vividly. The FOMO was built on ICOs. That's pretty much it. In 2021, you could argue the FOMO was built on, NFTs and all these new, you could say SHIB had a lot to do with it. So it's like NFTs, memes. You had a lot of L2s come out, right? But still, not a whole lot of institutions. They were talking about it, watching. But now you're talking about like real institutions that are about to jump in. And it's unlike anything we have seen before. And because of these institutions, we're talking about trillions that they're holding that could be coming into the space. The entire crypto market cap is barely above 1 trillion. BlackRock alone holds 9 trillion of assets. Fidelity holds close to 5 trillion in assets. That's 15 trillion of assets. That's 15 times, just those two companies alone hold 15 times more assets than the entire market cap of entire crypto. So if you think about that, how much money is really out there, it's crazy. It's crazy. And those two companies are just two US-based companies. What about all the other companies from other countries that are worth, that's holding trillions too? And forget trillions. What about hundreds of billions or tens of billions, right? So this time around, I think it's hard to predict where things will end, but it could be way higher than people think. Can SHIB still make millionaires? That's a good question. SHIB's high. What was SHIB's high? I hate this new CMC layout. Why can't they go back to before? But anyways, man, that was a crazy time right there. 0.00008. It's more than 10x. Yeah, it's more than 10x. Okay, so they need to do a 10x or 11x or 12x just to get back to their previous high. So can it make you a millionaire? Yes. If you have 100,000 in SHIB, you do a 10x, that's $1 million, right? So can it make you a millionaire? Sure. But if you expect to make $1 million from, let's say, 10,000, that's going to be very hard, because then you're looking for 100x. Can it do 100x, which will pump it up to 400 billion in the next bull cycle? I would say that's very unlikely. Very, very unlikely. Is there a slight 0.00001% chance? Yes. But the market cap is just too big for it to be doing 100x in the next bull run. But something smaller like Pepe, which is at like 600 million, right? Can they do it? A bigger chance with them than with SHIB. But can you still make $1 million with SHIB? Yes. Can you make $1 million with Doge? Yes. Doge is about double of Doge. So it has to do a 10x too to get back to its previous high. 10x isn't bad. What other assets can you hold that'll give you a 10x within the next few years? Right? Just think about that. NMCT, is SHIB still the biggest transfer of wealth in human history? No. I don't think that's a correct statement, so no. All right, guys. Overall, Bitcoin still holding steady. Today, U.S. market, somewhat mixed, right? We got some economic data and earnings to digest this week. But overall, you got more FOMO from the institution. Standard Chartered become very, very bullish on Bitcoin. And this is all leading to great things that's coming later this year, okay? So smash on the like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys tonight, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.